College athletics is uniquely American. Nowhere else in the world will you find such a robust underpinning of a formal extracurricular activity associated with higher education. College sports is both the continuation of a childhood interest as well as a transition into a professional career. Student athletes are the foundation of this enterprise. From the NCAA to the NAIA to the NJCAA, college athletes come to campus with amazing talents, incredible skills, and awareness that, too, they want to grow, to elevate, and to mature. And thankfully, in Durham, North Carolina, there are two universities that have embodied all that I have just described: North Carolina Central and Duke. The Durham Sports Commission is an important growth of the city. Founded in 2016, the Durham Sports Commission recognizes that there exists all these assets and all of these opportunities to bring thought leaders together for an engaging conversation. March is normally set aside as being the National Women's History Month. And even though as we roll this interview out to the public, it may not be exactly March, but we are in the spring season, and we are happy to bring together another installment of the Commission's Bull Sessions. This time, two student athletes, one from each campus, and we thank each for carving out just a little bit of time to discuss the challenges and the rewards of being a student athlete. So with that, let me introduce our two guests. Darcy Bourne is from Esher, England, and is a midfielder for Duke Field Hockey. A freshman who excelled during the fall of 2020, she led the Blue Devils with 26 shots, 10 shots on goal, 7 points, and 3 goals. Through 4 games in 2021, Darcy has scored 4 goals, that in a total of 4 games. Now, prior to Duke, Darcy was a member of the U16, U18, and U21 England national teams while serving as captain for England's U16 team. That was a team that she was able to lead to a national title. She's also captured and was captain of the U18 squad. Now, from the other side of town is Christine Alcock. She's a senior at North Carolina Central, and she's actually a native North Carolinian. Christine is just down the road. That's where she's from, in Carborough, and her time as an Eagle has showcased her skills as an outside hitter for volleyball. During her junior year, Christine tallied 301 kills, 84 digs, 39 blocks, and 10 assists, along with 5 aces. In addition to her play on the court, Christine supports administrative operations at North Carolina Central. She specifically is filling the role of the Student Athlete Academic Service intern. So my name is Trip Durham, and with all of that, it is my pleasure to bring to you the opportunity to have a conversation with all of these folks and to do so in a very meaningful and engaging way. And with that, I will ask our participants to take off their mute, and we will start our conversation. And I am thrilled to start us off by asking, what is it that brought each of you to the sport that you love? What is the backstory of how it is you chose the sport that you are now playing? Darcy, why don't you lead us off?
Firstly, thank you for having me on. But in terms of sport, I always loved every sport as a child. I did every sport I could get involved with. And I remember specifically when I was, I think, 6 years old, watching the Olympic Games with my parents, and I just knew that was something I wanted to do. I didn't care what sport it was, but I knew that one day I wanted to go to the Olympics as an athlete. So I made sure to try my hardest in every single sport I could. And I used to play every sport you can imagine, but I played soccer. But at that time, at my school, there was only a boys' soccer team. And eventually one year, the school said to me that I had to join a girls' sport. And that time of the year, it was field hockey. So I joined hockey, and being competitive and having not played as much as the girls in my school, I joined my local club so that I could excel, and I just fell in love with the sport. And from there, as you said, I played the junior national teams up to the U21s, and now here I am at Duke playing field hockey, and it's a sport I love and want to pursue.
Yeah, so as Darcy said, first, thank you for having us both on. And for me, my dad's a basketball coach, so I first started out playing basketball. And then around the time when I was about 11 years old, my dad put me and my sister in a volleyball camp. And I really enjoyed it. I took to it very well. I was able to, pick up the skills pretty quickly, and I've been playing ever since. And for me, one of the really fun things about volleyball is that it's really year round. So there's school volleyball, like during the school year, and then after that's over, there's club volleyball, and then in the summer there's beach volleyball. So it's something that you can really play all year round, and that's one of the aspects that I really enjoyed about it, and that's what's drawn me to it and really kept me involved with the sport.
Christine, if you've watched any of the other sessions to this point, or if any of our viewers have watched any of the other bull sessions, you know I like to jump right in. Feet first, let's just go. As a senior, Christine, you've probably reached the end of your playing career. And I wonder through your journey in the sport and what I like to call this sports life, what have you learned about you and what has sport taught you about life?
Yeah, so I would say one of the biggest things I've learned about myself is that I am capable of much more than I ever thought I could be. Especially being a college athlete, it pushes you to grow and develop and be better in each and every area. That's, on the court, on the weight room, in the weight room rather, and even in the classroom, I've just been able to perform at levels that I really didn't know were possible for myself. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned in regards to playing volleyball. And as far as what sports taught me about life is not to put myself in a box. As athletes, we kind of tend to just identify as that because that's what we spend most of our time doing. But throughout my matriculation in college, and particularly when I first arrived at college, I had a lot of mentors that encouraged me to pursue leadership opportunities and extracurriculars and get involved in volunteering. So I've really been able to make myself a much more well-rounded person and make sure that I do have interests that I'm pursuing outside of sports.
I love the idea of not putting yourself in a box, but as a follow up, I wonder, Christine, how is it that you teach yourself not to be put in a box? What are your tricks to, in essence, leaving your mind wide open to possibilities?
Absolutely. So the biggest thing for me is always remaining curious. I'm a very inquisitive person. I like to, explore new things and, find out what I do like and what I don't like. And oftentimes that requires you to, step outside of your own box. My major is kinesiology, and I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist or maybe an occupational therapist. And so I decided to go, to a hospital and volunteer in that area. And I found that maybe that wasn't something that I really wanted to do long term. And so I really would never have come to that conclusion had I not, stepped outside of my box of being an athlete and, tried to discover something new. And in doing that, I was able to learn, my interests and also things that maybe didn't do my interests as well.
Darcy, you opened up telling us how it is you got to the point of playing field hockey. Through all of this transition in your life over the last 12 or 18 months, field hockey has become quite comfortable for you. It's been a constant. It's almost been like a companion. How has that familiarity helped you during this pandemic, especially as a freshman?
Yeah, field hockey has definitely helped me out through the pandemic because I guess if I go back to just before the first quarantine happened, I got injured and I recovered the day before the UK went into lockdown. So that was kind of devastating that I just got through my recovery and that hockey had been taken away from me again. But when I came out to America, the first time I got to train in a team environment and play with a team was when I came to Duke. So that became my constant when I came out here, that I was in a team setting and I'd been given these opportunities. And I just felt so fortunate that throughout a pandemic, us in the ACC managed to have a season in both the fall and the spring and continue to play and be on campus. And it's just been a great way to get to know the team and live as normal a college life as possible during these weird times.
I'm a big fan of asking both sides of the equation, flipping the coin, looking at the heads and the tails. You just answered the heads. Let's talk about the tails. There are challenges associated with being a freshman, with being in a new country, trying to learn a new culture, there are those challenges anyway without a pandemic. How has all of the challenges of being new and being out of context in your own area, how have you been able to get through all of that?
For sure, there have been some difficulties, and when I first arrived, I was so uncertain of when I could get here because of the borders being closed, and I had to travel on my own without my parents. But as I said, it's just being in a team environment is so helpful. So when you have these difficulties of not having all in-person classes and not having spectators, or having to be stricter because you're in a team, it's worth it when you're with a team. You can work through it together. You guys can uplift each other, and when you've got those difficulties, it's just been so relieving because everyone's in the same situation together, and I think it's been a great team bonding experience, if anything, and we all grow from it. You can see where we started in August to where we are now. We've grown as a team in so many ways, on and off the field, and as I said, I'm just so grateful that I've been here at Duke and been able to have this experience throughout all of this.
Christine talked about not being in the box. You're actually speaking to taking the high road on perspective. So well done. I think you checked that box pretty well. Christine, this is going to be a loaded question. What's a typical day like for you? I know that student athletes, their days are much different than what we all experience in not being student athletes. And the word typical is probably one of the ways why this is a loaded question, because even typical for you is probably not typical. Take us through a day.
Yeah, so during my busiest time of the year is probably actually my off season, which is in the spring. And that's usually the busiest because that's when I have the time to load up on classes, on part-time jobs, internships, leadership opportunities, all of that. So I would say my busiest time in college so far was probably my junior year spring semester. And I was taking 8 classes. I had an internship, part-time job, and then I'm also involved in some organizations on campus. So I was very busy. So a typical day, probably would start off at around 6:30. I'd wake up, head over to practice, which started at around 7:30, and I'd be there for a couple of hours. And so at about 9:30, I'd walk over to my first class of the day, and I had, I think, either 3 to 4 classes, like back to back. And so after that, I'd rush right back to my room, eat, and then sit down for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Then I'd rush back across campus to do weights, and that was from about 3 to 4, sometimes 4:30. And then, as I said earlier, I had a part-time job, so I would go straight from weights to my job, stay there from about 5 until maybe 10:30, then get back to my dorm room, shower, eat, all that fun stuff, and then get right to my homework. And that would take me to maybe 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, and then do the same thing the next day.
If you ever read the back of a shampoo bottle, it says wash, rinse, repeat.
Yes.
And it sounds like that's what you have been doing. And I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. And on the back side, I invite Darcy to jump in. Christine, at what point did the time management, did the rhythm of your days, when did it start making sense that this is how I need to go about doing it?
Well, as a student athlete, much of your time is like spent for you, like it's budgeted for you. So there's not really much time where you can really decide what it is that you want to do. So I had to realize early on that there's a set amount of time. I have pretty much a fixed schedule when it comes to, my athletic commitments and my extracurriculars. So I had to figure out very early on how to budget my time accordingly to make sure that I'm, studying, getting my homework done, and making sure that I'm involved, volunteering on campus and things such as that. So really just making sure that, I'm prioritizing how I spend my time outside of athletics to make sure that I'm really getting everything done.
I think that's really incredible when you put your day down like that. I thought my day was busy, but I probably start an hour later and finish an hour earlier maybe. And I guess for me, I've been trying to figure out how to juggle my time as a student athlete, as a freshman coming into this, and also I've recently set up an organization. So I can kind of parallel that with your part-time job, and I don't know if you have any tips or advice on how you started off that time management, like you said, just prioritizing, or if there's anything else you did.
Yeah, so for me, I'm very organized. I like to have a planner, and for me, I literally like plan my days hour by hour. That's kind of extreme. It doesn't have to be that specific, but just for me, seeing it on paper and making sure that I'm able to see all of my commitments, maybe like any conflicts that I have, and also, a big thing for me is being forward thinking and knowing that, okay, if I have to work late this night and I have a project due the next day, then maybe I need to spend the weekend prior to that making sure that everything for that project is done. So I would say just making sure that you're organized, which it sounds like you are, which is great. And then also being forward thinking as well.
All right,
Incredible.
I've got to ask, and I hadn't planned on asking this, so you guys be ready. You mentioned, Christine, having the plan on paper. With your generation, is that literal? Meaning you don't have it on your phone, you don't have an electronic version? And the reason I'm asking, and I'll ask both of you to respond, generations now are not so much dependent on the phone or a tablet or technology, but it just seems to be an extension of them naturally at this point. Is having it on paper, and maybe I'm answering the question for you, is having it on paper so that it is different than having it on an electronic device?
For me, writing things down helps me to remember it more. So, and it also helps me to be able to like really visually see it like on paper. And I really like doing it that way. But I also use my phone as well. So anything that's on a piece of paper is also in my calendar on my phone. And then I also have like 20 different alarms every day just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. So I'd say I use both in conjunction with one another, to make sure that I'm staying on top of my schedule.
Darcy?
Yeah, I tend to use a physical planner as well. Like Christine said, I find writing it down helps me remember, and I kind of know roughly when I have a Zoom on each day and I walk past my planner in the morning, remember at what time the Zoom is out or whatever it is. And I think it's nice to have it visually out, whereas on your phone there's so much going on the whole time, I get a little bit overwhelmed. But as Christine said, I do also have planners on my calendar, on my phone, on my laptop, so that if I am out and about, I have the details with me as well, just as a backup, I guess, so I don't forget anything.
Yeah, I think I'd be a little discombobulated too if I had 20 different alarms going off at any point during the day, but I certainly understand where Christine is coming from. Darcy, when we had a sort of a pregame meeting a couple of days ago, you talked about the Play Like a Girl movement. It's a movement that started in 2004, and it certainly has grown into both a national and an international movement. It's a rally cry, play like a girl. And is it important? I guess if you answer yes, is it important that the movement switch more into a positive connotation as opposed to a negative connotation? Because there's an age group like me that years ago we used to say, you throw like a girl. But now play like a girl is a movement.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fundamental, and the meaning behind the Play Like a Girl movement is so that it can help girls gain confidence and develop leadership skills through sport that form the basis for success. And I think the whole movement is so empowering because it helps remind us that women and girls can and are so powerful. And we should be so proud of how far we've come as a gender when we had almost no rights so recently. And as you said, so many people associate running like a girl, throwing like a girl, whatever it is, like a girl as a bad thing. But we should be proud that as girls we can be successful athletes. You look at the US women's soccer team or the Williams sisters, like you can be so successful in whatever you choose to be. So I think this movement it's important to change the perspective of it to showing that playing like a girl is a good thing and that you can be strong, independent women despite the difficulties. And I think it's just important to take away that girls should be proud of who we are and that things are changing and they're changing rapidly, and we just need to be proud and uplift each other in the right ways, like this movement is doing.
How do you know if the movement is actually moving the needle? How are you able to check in on that? How do you know?
I try and keep myself updated through social media, and I think you can see in people's social media platforms how women in sport, for example, are having a bigger impact, or business women, or whatever it is. And I think the movement Play Like a Girl might not be as well known as some others, but the general meaning behind it is definitely moving forward. And you see women's sport and people fighting for their rights and having equal pay or whatever it is. And I think it's just really important that we continue moving in that direction.
Christine, Darcy talked about social media, and Christine, we know that social media can be really loud. either positively or negatively. And it seems like those are the only two extremes these days, that there really doesn't seem to be, Christine, much of a middle ground. What is the role? What is the effect? What do you think are the benefits and the liabilities of female sports and social media?
Yeah, so I think that the role of social media is to increase the audience, for women in sports. And in increasing that audience, you're able to increase the reach. And by doing that, it really increases the ability to affect change and do so positively. There's such a wealth of digital content nowadays. Like you can watch the March Madness for the NCAA women's basketball tournament on your phone. There's highlight videos on YouTube that you can see. You can watch Serena play in Wimbledon on your phone. And so there's such just a wealth of content, as I said before. And what that does is it increases visibility and increases awareness. And so a little girl can look and see a Serena, or look and see young women playing, in the NCAA tournament, and think that, one day that could be them. And all of that is because it's visual, it's there, they can see it. And so by being able to see it, they know that it's possible. As far as the liabilities are concerned with social media, I think anything that has positives, it's going to have negatives as well. And I think something that is typical in any movement is resistance, right? Resistance to change. And I think that that is to be expected, but I haven't seen it really hinder the progress of this movement of women in sports. And for me, that's very exciting, and I'm excited to see where it goes in the future.
Christine, do you have a particular style? Do you have a philosophy about how it is that you, as a student athlete, decide to engage social media?
Absolutely. I use it as much as possible to stay involved with those around me, and especially the athletes on my campus, and females, and making sure that I'm supporting and encouraging them, and affirming them, validating them wherever I can, to make sure that I'm establishing those relationships, especially with my teammates, to make sure that, everyone is doing well, and they have what they need to succeed, and they know that there's always someone to support them in their corner.
Darcy, when you think about being a student athlete and it being the next step in your journey, Darcy, I wonder how it is that you approach where you are today, knowing that sport may help you in the workplace later. What's your approach? I know that so many things are coming at you so fast. Do you have time to think about how today as a freshman is going to help you later on as a pro?
Yeah, I think almost everyone going into college is thinking about their future careers. And if you take Christine's daily schedule, for example, you can see that student athletes constantly work throughout their college careers. And like having to have that time management and the commitment and whatever it is, but being a part of a sports team while committing to school, it just prepares student athletes for the high pressure of a workplace or whatever future they intend to pursue later on. And I think these skills that we acquire as student athletes can 100% be positively transferred into the workplace. And this was one of my inspirations for the creation of a business I recently set up with my co-founder, Courtney Williamson. It's called Beyond Our Game, and it's a non-profit organization which focuses on promoting and empowering student athletes of color. And we create community through sharing minority student athlete storytelling, as well as allies, by sharing resources and having involvement in community service. But most importantly, going back to your question, we help serve these diverse student athletes by connecting them with businesses who are looking to diversify their workforce. And we really show our student athletes that they're the right candidates, and that everything they've had to work through being a student athlete, but also being a student athlete of color, has set them up in the best position to start their careers, and how to use all these skills they've learned in the most positive way, to whether it's to be a professional athlete or to work in a workplace. I think there's so many skills that we can take.
What was the inspiration for starting the nonprofit? Was there a moment in time that you just said, okay, light switch on, we're going to do this thing?
Yeah, so I guess it all started after the events this summer for me. I remember sitting at home watching after the death of George Floyd, and that hit me so deep, and I just knew at that point I wanted to do more to help out my community. and I attended a peaceful Black Lives Matter protest, and a photo of me holding a sign saying, "Why is ending racism a debate?" went viral and was shared by celebrities on Vogue, but most importantly for me, it was shared by Martin Luther King III. And that was when I realized that I'd been given the platform to speak up on what I thought was really important. And when I came over to America, I could see that the racism out here was different, and it was so real and in your face, and I wanted to do whatever I could to help my family and my friends, my teammates out here as well. And so when Courtney reached out to me, despite the Duke-UNC rivalry, I thought it was the perfect opportunity for us to get together and create some positive change with the platform we have as student athletes out here in America.
I'm going to circle back to that MLK the third here in just a moment. Christine, you've got just about 3 years more college experience right now than Darcy has. What is it that you've heard from Darcy? What is it, Christine, that you've learned about yourself in the 3 years being her senior? What is it that you've heard? What advice might you pass along? How adjusted is Darcy right now? Is she doing pretty well? What are your reactions?
Well, you are way far ahead of, where I was. When I was at that point in college. And I just want to commend you honestly on what you're doing, especially with your nonprofit that you're involved in. Um, I love that you are seeing where change needs to be made, and you're doing the work to do that. And as I said before, that's certainly not something that was top of mind for me early on in my college career. I really just want to hear from you. You talked a little bit about what you guys are doing with your organization now, with your nonprofit now. I want to hear a little bit about what your plans are for the future, and where you see this going throughout your matriculation in college, and possibly after as well.
Yeah, I think for both, well, firstly, thank you actually for what you said. It's really kind. But both for me and Courtney, we want this to be a career that we can bring forward after college. She's in her 5th year, so she's graduating this year. But it's really, we think, a resource that could be so empowering. And there are so many projects at various colleges and conferences, but we thought this was the first time we could unite student athletes among the whole country and really empower the student athletes of color who often feel they are overlooked for various reasons, when, if anything, they've overcome more difficulties which make them even better candidates for the job in the workplace. And we just want to create a community where both the student athletes of color that we're supporting feel like they're supported, but also other student athletes who want to be allies and want to help have a resource that they can reach out and educate themselves and educate others. And we can unite each other through our shared experiences. And I think having the community aspect as well as the career services aspect is one thing that I think is so important in our game. And the fact that obviously I'm only a freshman, so I will have this college connection for another 3 or 4 years. Yeah, I'm excited to see what the future holds for that.
My normal modus operandi is not to ask the same question of the panelists, because I want to try to get through as much conversation as possible. But I do want to ask, each of you seem to have had choices coming out of high school. Now, Christine, you grew up in the backyard, in essence, of North Carolina Central. Darcy, you did not grow up in the backyard of Duke. What is it about the Durham community, one that we've watched grow leaps and bounds over the last 10 years? What is it about Durham that makes it comfortable for you to have chosen both Central and Duke as being your landing place? Darcy, you're furthest away, literally at times. We'll start with you first.
Yeah, I guess it was quite a long journey for me to make it over in Durham, but I visited a few American universities. But as you said in the introduction, the US college experience as a student athlete is different to any other. And the way we're supported almost as professional athletes and be able to get such a high class degree at the same time, I thought was just an opportunity I couldn't pass. And looking around the universities, I just was overwhelmed by the support network and the facilities and the resources you have as a student athlete at college. And I knew 100% that it was the right decision for me to come out here. It felt like a big gamble at the time, going so far away from home, especially being on the national team. But I just thought, in terms of Duke specifically, it offered everything I wanted to get out of university in terms of the education, the sporting support, and also just the vibe. Like I just loved it, the people, and I thought Durham was a really cool town. And obviously the weather's a lot better than it is in London most of the time, so that was really appealing. But I've only experienced a Corona time Durham and a Corona time Duke, so I'm really excited for my next 3 years to see what it actually has to hold in normal times.
For me, I actually, when I was from like the time when I was maybe 5 up until an early teenager, I actually lived in Durham, probably less than a mile from campus. So I'm like super familiar with the area. I've, been involved in Durham for a long time. And if you told me like back then that I would have been attending college at NCCU, I probably wouldn't have believed you, but it's honestly turned out to be the best thing for me. The people there, they're so welcoming. Everyone is very kind, very generous, and everyone wants to see you succeed. And I've had mentors and friends, teammates really pour into me and help me to develop into the person that I am today. And just speaking to Durham itself, there's just such a rich amount of diversity, and it's just a huge mecca for sports. I mean, there's Duke and Durham, there's UNC not too far away, NC State. So as far as that's concerned, it's really a great place for college athletics in general. So I guess those factors, and of course it being close to home, which is not something I initially considered, but it's turned out to be great. I can go home on the weekends, free food, hang out with my family. So it's been an amazing experience for me.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about quarters for the laundromat. The
No.
laundromat is about 15 or 20 minutes down the road, which makes perfect sense. A couple of more questions for each of you as we start to wind down our time together. Christine, you've had a chance through college now to watch a lot of good leaders. You've developed your own leadership skills. We've got a lot of young women that are watching and listening to this edition of the Bull Session. From a female playing sport, what do you see as being the ideal leadership skill set? And how can these young athletes leverage their time in sport to become leaders themselves?
Sure. So, for me, a long time ago, I heard someone say that leaders create other leaders, not followers. And so that's what I try to do. And I think that the best way to do that is to serve others. And I do that through, supporting those that I'm with, encouraging those. Sometimes you have to share the load when someone isn't up to their best. And sometimes you have to provide extra resources for people when they're in need of those. So I think that serving is a great trait of a leader. I think it's also helpful to be self-reflective and make sure that you're always, I guess, auditing your own performance and making sure that you're growing and improving. And the best way to do that is through constantly evaluating yourself. And then the last thing I would say that's important to keep in mind as a leader is to remember that before we're anything else, before we're athletes, employees, any of that, we're people first, right? People make mistakes. And so I think it's important to extend grace and be as gracious as possible towards yourself as well as other people. And in that grace, I also think it too is important to make sure that you're learning from mistakes and coaching those that you're leading through mistakes as well. And I think that women can leverage their experience in sports to grow leadership through the little things. I think that leadership often is seen as something that's, very lofty and grand, but I think that a good example for me in my experience of being a leader that isn't necessarily, I guess, the conventional definition would be, I think this is my freshman year, spring semester in college, and my team, we would all have to run like a mile or two after practice. And after I would finish, running around the track, I would turn right, like I wouldn't stop or, catch my breath or anything. I would turn right back around and go grab one of my other teammates and run with them, push them, motivate them to finish. And once I got that person to the finish line, I would go back and grab someone else and just continue to do that. And that did two things. Number one, I was able to lead my teammates by motivating them, supporting them, encouraging them, and pushing them through to the finish. And The second thing that I was able to do was set a precedent on the team and set an example and say that, once you're done, go back and help someone else. And so I think that's, a small way to be a leader and not necessarily, as I said before, a conventional, thing that you think about when being a leader. But I think supporting and encouraging others is a great start.
Darcy, Martin Luther King III did a little bit of that with you, encouraging you by reposting one of your tweets. What is the power of social media, Darcy, in your mind? And how is it that little moments like that really do play into the larger conversation about not only what you feel like is a cause, but how you move forward with your cause?
I think, sorry, similar to what Christine said, I really enjoyed that story. And I think I have a similar mindset with using my platform on social media. And it's the little things that you think may go unnoticed that you do selflessly just to help other people. That's a key example of me at that protest that I attended. I didn't think I was going to have an impact, but through Martin Luther King III sharing that, I did have an impact. And it reminded me that everyone has this power through social media, especially as student athletes. You have this platform, and we can't underestimate that power. And we've seen over the past year that when we use this power for a positive way, it's just undeniable, and change will come. And I think through social media, we can keep reminding ourselves, reminding each other what is really important, and supporting each other, supporting our teammates, supporting movements that we care about, whatever it is. I think the power of social media is just, you can't underestimate it. And most importantly, when you stand united in using these power and speaking up on whatever you want to speak up on, that power is just so much greater than anything else when we all stand united in doing it. So I think if I have any advice, it would be to take that first step, use your voice, promote others, promote yourself, so that you can create that change that you want to create.
All right, let's put a bow on our conversation. And again, I'm just blowing my philosophy of not asking the same question to both. I'm blowing that out of the water. It doesn't matter to me who answers first. But we've gone through all of this great backstory about who you are, what your journey is. I'm interested to know, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I can start off. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I can start off. I would say for me, honestly, I'm not sure for certain, as far as, career wise. But a couple of things that I do know that I want to do is one, to give back. Similar to Darcy and what she's doing with her nonprofit organization, I want to give back as much as possible, whether that be with my time, gifts, talents, money, any way that I can, to help anybody that I can. And the second thing that I'm interested in doing is mentoring and helping to develop skill sets, leadership skills within others, be it young women, students, athletes, because there are a lot of people that took the time to do that for me. So I would like to do that for others as well.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I have similar future in mind where I'm doing some mentoring now and I'm trying to give back to my community, but I want to use my sporting platform to continue that. And I still have my dream that I had when I was 6 years old of going to the Olympics. And I think that's still something I really want to achieve. And hopefully for me, if I were to achieve that goal, it could really make a difference in my sport, because field hockey is a sport that's very predominantly white and there's a huge lack of diversity. And me growing up in that sport, I didn't have many role models that looked like myself to look up to. So I would really love to act like a role model for young black and brown girls who want to join the sport of field hockey, and also to mentor people through and just try and use that platform continuously to give back to my community in whatever way I can.
Well, Darcy and Christine, I can't thank you enough for carving out some time to not only be here and recording this today, but also passing this word through archive. The people that watch it a month from now, that listen to it a year from now, I appreciate you passing along your knowledge to everybody else. And for those of you who have been watching and have been listening, please share our conversations on all of your own social platforms. Remember, this Bull session has been powered by the Durham Sports Commission. You can find them online at durhamncsports.com. My name is Trip Durham, and I wish you all a very healthy spring and 2021.